this is how you make the decision based on this criteria. And anybody, I mean, literally, this is where I go back to, I could pull someone off the street who's never been in my clinic. They're not even a therapist. I can put that policy in front of them and they should be able to execute based on the policy and the way we had it written out. Now, it took years to get there and it took a lot of work. And, you know, you have to have somebody that wants to be a good performer to perform. But like, Dave Kittle, welcome back. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Tony. I am feeling great. If you can see, I got my green Eagles fatigues. There are 4 teams remaining. We have the NFC Championship game this Sunday against the Commanders, and
Yes.
Go Eagles. Anyone but the Chiefs, actually.
That's the saying. That's what I've heard. I want to see my situation would be Eagles versus
Bills.
Chiefs, Bills. Yeah.
Not Chiefs.
Eagles versus Bills.
If you want the Chiefs to win, no, you're a Bengals fan, so there's no way you want the Chiefs to win.
No, we have zero desire for that. Although I was talking to the team over at Sarah Health, and they're, of course, big Chiefs fans. They're in that area. So, all right. So you came to the table with an awesome topic. We should have gotten Jerry Durham. 7 critical metrics for a PT private practice. You know, and for context, my background. So we started the practice. We knew nothing about what to track. We knew nothing about what was important. Then we dove deep into a ton of business training to really learn how to turn a hobby into a business. And then everything was tracked. I mean, we had 100 metrics that we were tracking, which I think is the mistake that most people make. Correct me if I'm wrong. You go from knowing nothing to thinking you know everything. You track every single thing, but then you don't do anything with the information. We would have weekly metrics, daily metrics, monthly, annual. We had, you know, who's responsible for that. We had our organizational chart, our org board, which was publicly posted. So everybody on the team knew what they were responsible for. It's awesome. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying that's what you have to do to have a real business. But at some point, the shine wore off. And people didn't care. And then we got to the point where I can remember this conversation distinctly. I was working with a front desk person and I said, hey, you know, we're trying to incentivize this. And look, we'll give you an extra $50 if you get your percent of arrivals up. And I give you a framework on how to improve percent of arrivals. So when somebody cancels, here's a 3-step algorithm that you can follow. She said, quote, it doesn't matter. I'm doing everything I can. Nothing is going to help. You can keep the $50. And like at that point, I realized the culture had changed, the culture of the company. So you lead us off. We still have maybe 3 primary metrics that we track, but I want to hear from you. What's going on?
Well, I'm curious. What do you track? What do you track, or do you want to kick it in once I start? Do you want to review it?
No.
I'm curious. What are your 3?
We track percent of arrivals. So, you know, if I have 10 patients scheduled and 9 show up, it's 90% arrivals. We're shooting for 95% or better. We track completed plans of care. So, you know, if I prescribe a 12-visit plan of care, do I complete 12 visits within that plan of care? And then we track returns. We depend on returning patients a ton. So anytime in my clinic, if you look out there, there should be 50 to 70% of patients have been patients previously within the same year, within previous years. So those are our 3 metrics. If I know patients are coming back and they're finishing their plans of care and they're showing up for appointments, I know everything else is going to work and I know my team's doing an amazing job. So those are my 3 that I look at pretty consistently.
Got it. All right. So let's dive into it. I just reviewed this actually with Sturdy McKee last week. So he's my colleague, my business partner, and also business coach. I have nothing to sell you, so you can go use him as a business coach, but I don't get anything from it. I just wanted to shout him out because he helps me immensely. We have like 3 calls a month or something. So it's like 3 out of every 4 weeks we're speaking. So number one is leads, prospective patients. So if you have an EMR, you should be able to track it in the EMR. If you don't, or if you have a clunky EMR, you simply track it on an Excel spreadsheet or now Google Docs. And like every month, so right now we're January 21st, but let's just say if we were at February 1st, you want to have like from February 1st until February, 28th, the last day of February, you're tracking every single day, you're tracking the number of leads. So you're tracking like the names and the contact information. You could do that on a Google spreadsheet, Google Sheets, or ideally in your EMR. So the number one thing on like the top of funnel of like this whole thing, this whole practice, which we hope is a business and not always is, but number one is prospective patients. So it's anyone that reaches out, they call in, a current patient mentions another patient's name, they email introduce you, they text the patient to call you, whatever. So it's when someone reaches out to you on your website, whatever it might be. Does that make sense so far?
It does. I want to know though, like I don't know of any EMRs that do a good job with managing leads, customer, categorizing them, that kind of stuff. Like I intentionally, I hate it. I don't put now I don't have leads. Like there's no such thing as a lead in my business. If you call, you're coming from therapy. But I guess the closest second thing I can say is like right now to my left, I can't show you, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 referrals that have come in from referring physicians that we've reached out to and we haven't gotten a call back. So you can call that a lead, I guess.
Exactly.
But I don't have a good way to get them into an EMR, and there isn't an EMR that I know of that would allow me to put this in without creating a whole patient case. And if this person says, I don't want to go to therapy, I have no good way to get them out of the EMR. It's like once they're in there, they're trapped. I don't want them in there, and I have no good way. It's just not a good marketing system within most EMRs that I'm aware of. Is yours different?
Well, I use Go High Level. I use High Level on the front end as a separate software that does email and text. If someone fills out an insurance, I use your kind of template. It's transformed or morphed over the years, but I use your no surprise medical bill. Here, we're going to check your insurance benefits. I use that template that you have on your website. So if someone fills that out, their information gets sucked over into High Level, and then they get email and text follow-ups. Now, of course, if they put in the wrong cell phone number on purpose because they don't want text, or if they put in the wrong email because they don't want emails, then they're not going to get the replies. So we use High Level for that. That is, again, it's a separate piece of software, really just on the front end for marketing. And I want to push back on you because you said if you get a lead, a prospective patient's contact information into your system, you don't have an easy way to get them out. My question would be, why would you want to get them out? Because some people are on the fence. They're eventually going to come to you. Maybe they need 2 days, 2 weeks. Maybe they need 2 months. In some cases, maybe they need 2 years, and you're sending an email or something every 6 months or something. So, potential patients, clients, potential customers, clients, whatever you want to call them, leads. Some people are not ready to take action right away. So that's why you could have some CRM to track the leads, to follow up with the leads automatically without you doing anything.
That's the thing. CRM was what I was thinking of, and I couldn't get it out. And you're right. Like as the words were coming out of my mouth, I knew you were going to say, "Why? If you have contact information on somebody, why would you not want that? Even if they're not going to be a physical therapy patient, like why wouldn't I be marketing hot packs and cold packs to them? Why would I not be marketing other services to them? Why wouldn't I have them on an email list and then sell ad space on my email list that I send out to them?" There's 100 different ways.
Because for you specifically, because you're very unique, you could be sending Amazon affiliate links of products or, buyer's guides or whatever you want to call it. Like you could be sending that to those people, and those people may never come into your clinic, but they might be clicking on those links and, emailing you back and saying, thank you, this is helpful. Or you sent me, I don't know, this buyer's guide had, 10 links on it, but they bought 1 or 2 things and they might say, thank you. I mean, why not?
Yeah, no, you're right. I have no objection to it. I should. I don't. I'll have to figure it out.
All right. So number 1 is leads. Number 2 is new patients. So it's what you said, kind of like arrival rate, but arrival rate is like a fraction. It's like it's a percentage of how many people convert from leads to new patients, right? So it's like we're talking about when we're talking about the 7 critical metrics in a physical therapy private practice, we're talking about like the bare foundational metrics before the fractions, before a percentage, where you take 2 of these, you put them together, and you're like, this is an arrival rate or a cancel rate or even the completed plans of care. So completed plans of care is not even in this 7. I know it's a big metric, but it's like a big robust number that we're talking about for a whole episode of care. So we're talking about very like foundational things. So we got number one is lead. Number two is new patient evaluation. So they're actually coming into your clinic, or in our case, they're scheduling an evaluation. Our physical therapists travel to the patient's home apartment, their corporate office sometimes, their hotel room if they're a tourist, whatever. And that first visit encounter gets completed. Like we complete the visit, we have their credit card on file, or for you, you evaluate the new patient, you guys build the claim, you collect the copay. Number two would be that new patient evaluations.
Yeah. Real quick, I wanted to pull this up. Scott said, treat renewal like a verb, future oriented, not a noun, past oriented. And he said, would you agree that retaining and growing customers is equally as important, if not more important, to a company's bottom line?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, 100%. Like, and that's what I try to say. Like, there should be this snowball effect. Once you get, let's say, the first 10, you go from 0 to 10. 3 of those should be coming back, and so now the next 10 is actually 13, even if you grew none. And so for us, I knew by year 3, I just need to make it to year 3. By year 3, I would have so much momentum, such a snowball effect that I wouldn't even have to do anything. And at least the percentage that returned would be my base. And then I could grow on top of that. So yeah, I put all of my efforts into patient retention, returning patients. We said last time on the episode, I would never say, I hope I never see you again. I tell everybody, hey, expect to see me again. Come back. This is your place. We will take care of your problems. So yeah.
2 quick things. One, Scott, thank you for coming on here and engaging live. I agree with that 100%. You have to have the reactivations, the people that want to come back and see you because they love Tony, they love me, they love the front desk person, they love the office, the camaraderie that you have with your, cheers like environment, whatever you want to call it, all those factors. But then also, so on LinkedIn, I messaged Scott last week. I forgot to tell you, Tony. I said, hey, Scott. So he works for a physician in a concierge practice in Connecticut. I don't know why I said I thought he worked in Florida last week, so my mistake. But I said I invited Scott on, so maybe I don't know if I can do Thursday, but maybe next week. Maybe we'll have Scott if he's able to call in. We'll book a time for him to come on here because I would love to talk with him about being a physical therapist who does diagnostic ultrasound and then also that works for a concierge physician or working for a physician in general. Seems very fascinating. And a lot of the stuff that he's commenting here live, like he's kind of like in our groove. So I think he would be a good guest. What do you think?
I agree. Absolutely. Love to get you on, Scott.
Excellent. Okay. So we hit leads, new patients. Number 3 is total visits, right? Total visits, like clinic wide, obviously. Then you break it down like, visits per therapist, and you can break it down from there. But total visits, right? Like you just said, like you need the new patients coming in, but you also need like the reactivations. You need like the previous patients that have aches, pains, whatever. They need to feel comfortable reaching back out to you. They come back in the clinic. So like you said, you need to get to year 3. So year 1, you're kind of, everyone's lean. Year 2, year 3, you're kind of building momentum. You're getting some of those new patients every year, but you're also getting some of those reactivations to kind of raise their hand and say, hey, I want to come back in. I have a new issue, or that same issue crept up because I went skiing or I did XYZ, whatever. So number 3, total visits. Number 4.
Wait.
Go ahead.
The only thing that I would say, now you're in a different world. And real quick, Scott said you got the wrong Scott. This Scott is in Florida. I hate visits. I hate total visits. We used to track total visits when everybody was doing a 4-unit visit. Now nobody does a 4-unit visit. Everybody does something different. So for me, I track units per FTE, if we're going to track something like that, just because visits, I remember hiring somebody, we had an agreement, we signed a contract. I used visits as my metric. Well, they thought it was a 2-unit visit. So they were like, yeah, I could do 40 visits a week. No problem. No, I need 160 units a week, So yeah, I insurance-based practices, you're probably going to use units rather than visits. But other than that, totally agree.
Awesome. I'm getting my people way mixed up. I'm talking about Dr. Sean Altman, who also, hasn't he been also commenting live, but not today?
Yeah. I
Okay.
interviewed Sean. Sean is exactly the setup that you were talking about. But yeah,
Okay. I'll have to check out the video. I didn't see the interview, but I want to
they
check it
both
out.
start
So
with an S.
I'm somewhat in the ballpark. Okay. So my bad, Scott. I was talking about Dr. Sean Altman. And then also, as I clicked into LinkedIn to check that message, then I saw Tony doing the newbie in his living room
Yeah.
for your son that has a jammed finger from basketball. So that's another topic we're gonna have to talk about another day because you got the newbie at home. I didn't know you officially got the newbie.
Yeah.
You posted it 10 hours ago, which means maybe you just got the newbie. So anyway.
Go ahead. What's the next metric?
Okay, so we got number four. So we just said total visits. Then number four, depending on the practice, like specifically for your practice, it's units. Now in my practice, like we do 60-minute home visits, so every visit is a 4-unit visit, typically, right? For the most part. And we're less like with units, we're hitting pretty much 4 units. So like for me, it's not a huge metric because it's like if you're in a group setting and it's like one-on-one versus like multiple patients, or like you said, sometimes a therapist maybe has a 2-unit visit, but then in general you're billing 4 or 5 units if it's one-on-one and it's medically necessary and all that. But again, these are the 7 critical metrics of a private practice. So like units is one of those levers, right? So like if you're billing legally and compliantly, if a therapist is billing more units, those are the things that are increasing the claims, but then obviously increasing the revenue and the scale of the practice, right? If you have multiple therapists and one therapist averages 3.9 units, and then you have another therapist that's averaging like 2.5 units, and they're both, let's just say, full-time therapists, they're both licensed, they're both PTs, they're doing evaluations, reevals, discharges, all that, treatments. And let's say they're both the same, they're both 5 years out of school, right? So you have one therapist, if they're all legally and compliantly billing, Sturdy McKee would look at that and say, well, let's look at both of these therapists. And typically the one that's, if they're all treating around the same number of patients, but the person who's treating and billing 2.5 units on average is typically underbilling. And Sturdy has seen this for years across the country. Like therapists, again, there's always the outliers, like where there's fraud and it's crazy and it gets caught and all that. But typically physical therapists underbill, which again, we don't really have that big of a problem because we have the one-on-one in-person visits. And then if you're in a brick and mortar office and you have patients coming in and out, that's where some of this fluctuation, occurs or changes. What do you think of units? I mean, you kind of just mentioned it, so I'm sure you're on board with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about the culture one more time, I was listening to a clip from, I can't think of the podcast, right? The All In podcast. They were playing a clip of the Starbucks CEO. Basically, he was saying, nobody better bother me at night. Nobody better bother me on the weekends. Nobody better bother me on the holidays. And all of the guys from the All In podcast were like shocked. They were appalled. They're like, what kind of culture is this? This is we're coming out of the school of you work and work and work and you overachieve and you do all this 80-hour work weeks. I can see both sides. But going back to units and individuals, I've had therapists in the clinic who I'm lucky to get 2 units an hour. I've had other therapists in the clinic who are cranking 6 and 7 units an hour. There are ways to make that work. There are ways to do it legally and compliantly, but you have to understand not just the culture of the team, but the individual. And what I had to eventually do was, and this is always the case, you start putting people in, you hire somebody for something. It never works where you think they're going to go. You let them develop and then you move them to where they're going to thrive. So person like that, slow thinker, slow documenter, they spend more time with the patient, which is fine. It's got its place. They're going to see more of my persistent pain. They're going to see more of my patients with cognitive decline and other things. Whereas my high production, they're going to be in a fast-paced clinic. They're going to see younger, more athletic, healthier people. But if I try to force a round peg into a square hole, it's never going to work, So yeah, you can find production in units. You just got to match it to the personality of the therapist, I think.
Well, yeah, and of course that all goes back to your interviewing process and hiring and, who you're speaking with and trying to figure out those things ahead of time, potentially, if possible.
Yeah. Number
Okay,
five.
so those first four typically kind of like they're kind of clinical oriented, found in the EMR. If not, you use some of the, Google spreadsheet type stuff. Number five is revenue. So top line revenue. Again, fairly straightforward. And it's not like something that, and profit bottom line is not on here because it's something that could be changed depending on cash accrual and different ways of accounting and different different things that are going to be part of number six. But number five, top line revenue, like you kind of mentioned, going from lean first year, growing second year, get to the third year, over time each year, that top line needs to be growing. Otherwise, you're shrinking. So when we're talking about the seven critical metrics in a private practice, number five, top line revenue.
Yeah, when we were looking at deciding, are we going to grow for acquisition or are we going to grow for profitability? That kind of determined, all right, if we're going to be an acquisition target, we want top line revenue, we want to grow that, 5 million plus. But then we switched and we said, yeah, we're not going that direction. We want profitability. I want cash in my bank account today, not 20 years from now. So then we switched and I said, I don't care what the revenue is. I want to maximize profitability. So just depends on the target metric that you're looking for.
Was that before or after you like bought the building that you're in, you bought real estate, you took that money and then you put it somewhere else? Like what came first there? Do you remember?
I would say it would have been around 2006. We started in 2001, 2002. Probably around 2006. We were like, we're not going to grow to the size we need to grow to be acquired. I would have been, I would have
What
just
does that mean though? Because every practices get acquired and they're like 300 grand, they're 500 grand, they're small, they're like solo practices.
I wouldn't call it like I sold a practice. Yeah, I wouldn't call that an acquisition. I would call that selling a practice. An acquisition, you're talking about like US physical therapy, you're talking about a private equity, which we do need to talk about private equity because I see all of these posts coming out talking about if private equity is getting involved in private practice physical therapy, there must be potential there. I think there's a discrepancy in this. But anyway, so when I say acquired, I mean private equity. I mean a 5, 10, $20 million deal, not
Got it.
anything under $1 million.
Got it.
And so with that, 2006 is when we got married. 2008 is when we had our first son. So like we knew we were shifting directions. And I just, at that point, I just knew that I wanted to focus on profitability and cash in the bank. So that's when
Love
we
it.
said, we're going to consolidate, we're going to close the laggard clinics, we're going to focus on just maximizing profitability.
Love it. Okay, so that was number five, revenue. And again, like I said, profit is not on here. Number six, expenses. Again, you take five, you take six from five, you got your top line revenue and expenses. Of course, there are going to be some other family items or whatever that are on the books, but in general, you can get your profit from revenue and expenses. So number six is expenses. Of course, those big buckets, you have your overhead, right? So your rent, your equipment, your tables, your technology, some therapists are buying these, is it like cardon tables? They're like 3 grand, 5 grand, whatever. Like they're expensive. So there's overhead. Obviously there's the rent, utilities, any other costs, obviously liability insurance, but any other insurances like for a brick and mortar practice. So the overhead is part of this expense bucket. And then obviously personnel as well. So your labor, which your payroll is typically like half of your revenue at any given point, approximately 50, maybe 60%. It depends on the practice. So number six, expenses.
Yeah, same with us. So you look at either I grow top line or I shrink the expenses. But you can't save, you can't cut expenses to be wealthy. You just cut expenses when you've grown so fast, your expenses have blown up. There are times where I'm like, I don't even care, just pay it, pay it, pay it, pay it, because you so much money is coming in. But then at some point, that fat needs to be trimmed. And so that's where, like for us, we did end up years ago, 2009, I think, we bought the building here in Ohio. We had purchased real estate in 2006 down in Sarasota. So we were looking at, all right, how do we reduce our rent liability? Well, we buy the building. Obviously, there's drawbacks to that, but staff, if we weren't going to grow and I wanted to focus on profitability, I might look at only taking the most profitable referral sources, payers. I don't need as much staff. I can make more money with less people. So then we would downsize there or not replace people as they moved on. But like you said, I mean, the biggest expenses are payroll by far. Then you get into rents, mortgages, and then normal utilities are minimal.
Got it. All right. So to recap so far, we got one more. But to recap, number 1, leads. Number 2, new patient evals. 3, visits. 4, units. 5, your top line revenue. 6, your expenses. And now 7, any guesses? Think about a big leverage point, a driver. Like the difference between a practice that's got 1 or 2 therapists versus a practice that's got multiple clinics or multiple, dozens of therapists.
Marketing.
So we got FTEs. So like, again, the more FTEs in a practice, the more full-time equivalents. It could be therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapist assistants. So any of the clinicians, because every time you add a clinician, assuming you have all the other things in this list are dialed in, right? So you have the new prospective patients, the leads coming in on the top of the funnel. You got the new patients being booked, so that conversion rate we talked about. Then your number of visits are increasing, your units, like your total units are increasing, like across the board, with every new hire. So every new FTE is a driver that's driving all of this. It's driving the top line revenue. Then of course you're going to have more expenses, but there's going to be that margin, hopefully, that is what is building your practice, like you said, Tony. And then you reinvest it however you want. You open up the next clinic or 2, or you take that and you downsize and you do other things like you're doing, and you buy real estate and you put it elsewhere. But either way, like those FTEs, the full-time equivalents, or basically like your headcount, your new therapist or new clinician that is licensed, has malpractice insurance legally and compliantly, treating patients, they're increasing the scale and the size of your practice. So that is the 7 critical metrics of a physical therapy private practice.
Yeah, I think an interesting observation is every time, no matter how fearful we were to hire a therapist, every time we hire a therapist, we grow patient visits, we grow revenue, we grow to fill that therapist. And I would say, truthfully, I don't know. I mean, I don't know anybody. I'm trying to think through my history, anybody else who hasn't experienced the same thing. Once you hire that therapist, and I don't know if it's a motivation thing. It's like right now I'm comfortable. I've got enough referrals. I don't need more. You bring on $80,000 to $100,000 liability, and now you're like, heck yeah, I'm going to get more patients, more new referrals. I'm going to drive marketing. I'm going to do the things to fill that person. But literally in 24 years, every single time I brought on a new therapist, I filled that therapist. Interestingly, every time I bring on an admin, I fill the admin's time with work. I'm like, where was all this work before this new admin came on? And so my concern, though, is I hate to see, because I see this all the time, you hire an admin person to do a job. You have it in your mind. Maybe you've even done the job. Now you're like, all right, I'm going to plug this person in. Immediately, they're going to do 80% of the job that you were able to do. So you do 100%, new person that's not you does 80%. Then they're overwhelmed because 80% feels like 120%. You hire a second admin. Now the first one goes from 80 to 50. The second one comes in doing 50. And it's just like, there's something about, as you keep growing that aspect of the business in a lot of cases and a lot of practices, the workload fills their time, even though it doesn't grow exponentially like you would expect. So I don't know, clinicians, I can see objective. Okay, we've got 100 visits, we've got 150, we've got 200 visits every time I add new clinicians. Admin, it just seems like you can just keep adding them and the work just spreads to fill their time, but I don't necessarily see the same output.
I think if Sturdy McKee were here, or any other, Jamie Schreier, any other physical therapy business coach that had a practice for 20 something years, sold their practice, they're proven, they've gone through it all, either one of them or any other of the coaches that we know, they would say that those individuals, those admin folks that maybe have that swing in like what they can accomplish in productivity and all that, is either two things. Like either you hired the wrong person, or they didn't have the great enough training or onboarding or check-in calls and support and all that from you or I.
I wouldn't agree with the second part. Just because I know we have good training, good onboarding, good accountability.
But it could have been who you identified in the interviewing process, and maybe they didn't fully understand the full specs of the role. They don't want to do it. It just might not be the right person. Like they might be the wrong person on the bus, like your bus, and they need to be taken off the bus and go work somewhere else or something like that.
That's been more of my experience. They're a great person. They're, air quotes, a hard worker. They're, eager to learn and do all of these things. But really, and this goes back to the All In podcast and kind of the culture. And it's not a new thing. It's been like this forever. I talk to friends of mine that are in other businesses, other industry. I think the difference is when you're a clinic on the clinic floor treating patients, every minute of every day is on the clock. It's like every minute is a billable minute. And so every minute counts. When you're here behind the desk, it's easy to let those minutes slip away, especially if there's 2 or 3 people here. You start to talk, you start to socialize, you start to do other things. And there isn't that minute by minute accountability like there is when you're billing billable minutes on units and CPT codes. But like I was saying, I talked to my friends, like they're searching Amazon while, they're at work, and they're buying stuff, and they're booking trips for their vacation while they're at work. A therapist treating a full caseload could never do something like that. So I do think there's that component to this, where it's just so much easier to start losing efficiency. What's worked best for us inadvertently is we have one admin person. When there's one admin person sitting up here or part of the team, it just, they can kind of set their own pace. They can set their own tone. And typically the admin person we hire is a very specific characteristic of an archetype that's just like relentless. They will, I told you last week, treat every dollar like it's their dollar. They're the kind of person that's going to show up early. They're going to wipe down treatment tables, even if that's not their job. Like it's just in their nature. I remember I hired a young girl because we were walking through the gym and she picked up a step that had been left out by one of the therapists and she put it away. And I didn't tell her to. She wasn't an employee. She just saw it, picked it up and put it away. And I was like, you're hired. What do you want? I will pay you whatever you want. And it was an amazing hire. But you can't do that at scale. And I think that was another reason we said we're not going to go to be an acquisition target, because we're not going to go to scale. We're not going to go that direction. It is a different business at that point.
Makes sense.
All right. Was there anything else you wanted to hit on the metrics? Those are great.
So that's it. The 7 critical metrics of a therapy private practice: 1, leads; 2, new patients; 3, visits; 4, units; 5, revenue; 6, expenses, which includes obviously overhead and personnel, huge important buckets; 7, FTEs, full-time equivalents. I'm good with that if you want to jump over to another topic.
Well, let me take that a level deeper now. So what happens if one of those metrics isn't performing? But I imagine you have an idea in your head of, okay, this is the number we need to make for that metric to meet expectations, exceed, or underperform. What happens if it's underperforming? Where do you go from there?
I mean, that's the beautiful thing of this. So let's just say, so you mentioned marketing, right? So like, number one, if you're tracking leads, and every practice is different, but like if you're at 30 leads a month, you're at 50 leads a month, 100 leads a month, whatever, you're getting 5 leads a day, whatever, 10 leads a day, 10 leads a day, that's 300 leads per month. So if you notice like, oh, we're getting less leads, like what's going on? okay, so something's wrong with your marketing. Either you're not getting the physician referrals, Tony, like in your practice, like you used to because of like the ACOs and the hospital systems or whatever. Maybe, I don't know, Facebook shut down your Total Therapy Solutions Facebook page and Facebook groups or whatever, which hasn't happened. But I'm just saying, like, you would see based off of what's happening, what's the issue in the business, the practice, or the like a choke point, you would know, let's go back to this. Or you say, okay, we don't have like, we're getting leads, our marketing's fine, but we're not booking enough new patient evals. Like, what's going on? It's like, oh, well, we hired the new front desk person and like they're still getting used to like what to say on the phone or how to onboard to get the insurance information depending on the clinic, or like Jerry Durham type stuff, what they're saying or what they're not saying on the phone, or their tonality, or they seem like they are nervous and so they need more coaching and training and onboarding support or whatever. Or we say, hey, we're getting our normal number of new patient evals, but our total practice-wide number of visits is less. Well, what's going on? Are patients away because it's August? Or is because we have a new therapist who we're booking new evaluations for, and those new evaluations are not turning into whatever the number is, 8 visits per plan of care, 10 on average, 14, 16 visits per plan of care on average per therapist. Like, then that therapist needs more coaching and support on getting patient buy-in, therapeutic alliance. Maybe they need coaching on doing the actual evaluation. So the owner steps in and says, hey, let's do some fake evaluations, and I have knee pain, back pain, whatever, and you evaluate me and they get paid for that. So you would, based off of whatever is the issue of one of these 7 metrics, if one of these 7 metrics kind of go out of like the normal range, it's fairly easy to identify like what's going on.
Yeah. And for people watching, listening, I'm not going to pretend that we still have it to this level today, because I don't, because I have such a small group. But when we were at multiple locations, multiple providers, admin team, marketing team, all of that, we had it refined to the point where once a metric starts to show something's going on, okay, so the metric starts to decline, we would have a very black and white policy on this is how you handle that declining metric. If my new patient numbers decline, first we identify, well, why did it decline? Okay, well, Dr. So-and-so is on vacation. He's usually good for 1 or 2 referrals a week, or, inclement weather or whatever. We get a drop in new patient referrals. We know that that's going to affect us for the next 4 to 6, maybe 8 weeks of patient volume. So where am I going to grab some new patients? That's where we had developed the wellness program, the non-covered maintenance. Patients pay $100 a month to be in the clinic, but they're on an open maintenance plan of care, so that if my caseload drop even just a couple of vowels, I reactivate a couple patients that are in the clinic, and I literally bump it back up the same day. Like, it's not like I have to wait to reach out and do all this stuff. It's today I get a new patient in. Same thing though on the other end. Well, what happens if that metric is blowing up? It's outperforming. I've got more new patients than I can handle. Where do I put the patients that I have? Because I don't want a wait list. I shift them over onto the non-covered maintenance program. Everybody doesn't need one-on-one all the time. So we created that program as a reservoir of where we can pull patients from when we didn't have enough, and where we can push patients into when we had too many. But that was an objective black and white system that I can put into a policy that was typed out, written. This is how you make the decision based on this criteria. And anybody, literally, this is where I go back to, I could pull someone off the street who's never been in my clinic. They're not even a therapist. I can put that policy in front of them, and they should be able to execute based on the policy and the way we had it written out. Now, it took years to get there, and it took a lot of work. And, you have to have somebody that wants to be a good performer to perform. But like every single one of these metrics that we're talking about, at the highest level, you should have policies and procedures that support them. You should have objective performance metrics so that you say exceed, met, underperformed, and you should have a plan in place. It's not enough to say you're doing a terrible job. They need to have the tools to show them how to do the job. That was a huge challenge for us, because we came into business, we were like, you answer the phone, you say hello, you see what the person needs, but no, this is how you answer the phone. This is the inflection. This is the tone. This is the way you say hello. You don't say hi. You don't say sup. You say hello. My name is, and it really.
But why the commercials? I'm sorry, I had to.
Yeah, no, it's a huge eye opener once you start realizing. And I think that's what a lot of therapists who go into business thinking, I want freedom and independence, you suddenly realize as a business owner, especially a small business owner, you don't get any freedom. You don't get any independence. You're going back to basically, building everything from scratch, probably doing the things you hate most to get a business that's sustainable, that's not dependent on you.
Amen.
All right. Real quick, I grabbed a couple other things. Before we started the live, we were talking about clarity. So I had a great call on clarity the other day. For people who aren't watching, clarity.f as in Frank, M as in Mary, clarity.fm. It's a platform marketplace where you can create a free profile. And basically, it makes it easy for you to sell paid calls. It's voice only, the way it's set up. They do take 15% after the call has been completed. I have no affiliate relationship with them. I get no benefit from talking about them, but I know you, Dave, me, everybody, we give away so much of our valuable time to people who aren't going to value it, even if they think they're going to value it. And Thursday, I want to talk about this, how the easiest lever for me to pull to get better patient outcomes is charge more. Literally make people pay, even if they have insurance, and they will improve quicker. They will have a better patient care experience. They will do better in the long run. That goes into this. So Dave created a Clarity account. I didn't realize he had been sharing. So real quick context. Somebody reaches out to me. I don't know this person. You're a stranger to me. You say, Tony, I've got a couple questions for you. I just want to ask you something. Sure, no problem, stranger. Here's a link. You can go ahead and book a call. When they click on the link, it takes them to Clarity, to my profile. I set my price at $5 a minute, and they can click to book a call. They only get charged by the minute. So even if they book 15 and they do 8, they only pay for 8. But Clarity gives me the scheduler. It gives me a chat feature for communication. It gives me notifications. It's well worth the 15%. And then once the person proves that they actually need to talk to me and they're willing to pay to talk to me, I'll take them for free forever. Like, I don't care once you pass that threshold, but at least show me that you're going to value the initial conversation we have. What's been your experience?
I just had my first one last week, and I charge a little bit more per minute, although Tony can provide significantly more value. I do it because if you're reaching Tony, so many times, and sometimes it's colleagues and buddies that I've known, maybe I met in person and had a cup of coffee with, whatever. For those types of things, it's like I've done a ton of free calls. I've done a ton of free calls over the years. But you're right, now it's like more and more, whether because of this show, because of my YouTube and my show, Dave Kittle Show, or whatever, and other podcasts that we're on. Yeah, we get people that are cold reaching out for help and support. So I set my pricing at $8.33 a minute. So I did $500 per hour as the rate, and then it just prorates it down to like the minute. So it shows $8.33 a minute. Although, please, guys, go book a paid call with Tony. He'll provide more value and help because he's got more experience and more perspectives. I know the power of when people pay for something out of pocket. Everyone typically treats with more respect. Like, you get a free car when you're, 16, 17, 18 years old, you get a free clunker from a family member. Like, you don't treat it with as much respect. You get it dirty. You don't take it to the car wash. You forget the oil changes. You just don't care as much. Versus if you saved up your own cash and you paid your own at 16, 17, 18, you paid $2,000 or $5,000 or whatever for some used car, you're going to take care of it a little bit more when you pay out of pocket. And I don't want to go on the whole rant of health insurance and Medicare and all that, but like, I've seen the difference when people pay for something out of pocket. They're more serious about whatever the thing is. So I said, I need to make this call hurt a little bit, potentially. Like I'm going to say $500 per hour rate. And that's why my rate is $8.33 a minute, which at the same time, when someone books a call, my intention is to over deliver value. So if you pay $100 or $150 or whatever to speak with me, my intention is I'm bringing it. Like I'm going to bring it, meaning I'm going to have the onus is on me to provide hopefully 5 or 10x or whatever amount of value back to you for whatever you're asking, whatever the question is. So you're spending something, and my intention is you're going to have more attention around what I'm describing or the action that you then need to take because I've done the action before and here are my results and here's what I would do. So does that make sense so far?
Yeah, 100%. And that's my whole point in this is, and $500 an hour is not an unreasonable rate for you. You couldn't hire an attorney for less than $500 an hour. This is somebody who has no relationship to you. You have no idea what they need, what they want. When you're charging that kind of money, at least you can put some time in, you can prepare, you can do some other things. And this has been my experience. Anybody who understands the value of their own time also understands the value of your time. And I haven't figured out how to put this into words yet, but like I always think about, the conventional Medicare referral. I love my Medicare geriatrics. You guys met Dale. I've shared videos of all of them. Like we have such a great time. But the reality is they don't place a monetary value on their time. They have plenty of time to spend, time to share with others. And that's how they want to do it. So, if somebody wants 60 minutes of my life, because that's really what I'm giving them. I'm giving them 60 minutes of my life, my experience, everything that I've learned, everything I've paid to learn, distilled down. That person doesn't value their own time. Whereas you take somebody who does value their own time, and it doesn't mean just even money. I mean, a busy mom who's got a screaming kid who needs an answer and just wants to get out of here, she values her minutes. She knows that she needs to get back to the kids. There's a different emphasis, it's an internal locus of control more frequently. They're there to get the job done. They're there to get the outcome. And so in my experience, somebody who is willing to pay a painful price, and I agree it's got to be a painful price, they're going to have a better outcome for it. So if I'm really a coach, which I'm not, but if I'm really the person who's going to deliver the experience and the outcome, I should charge more. I should make it harder for you to get. I should, there are certain psychological levers that we can pull that have been well established that will improve you, the client, your experience. And I don't know why we don't do it. I know I didn't do it before because I just felt guilty. I felt like it was something internal in me that was keeping me from doing that. And it took me getting to the point of realizing for myself, I would never get Dave on the phone without compensation because I know that his time is valuable and I want to reward him for giving me the time that he's giving me. So Clarity, go check it out. I shared my link just so you can see what it's like. I just checked. I had 60 phone calls on the platform. I don't remember how much I made. I'm looking at it real quick and I'll tell you guys. $2,201.29 over those 60 phone calls. So I think I used to do $1 a minute and then I went to $3 and then I just went up to $5.
All right, you're gonna have to go up to $10 a minute to make my link look better, to make my offer. Listen, folks, if you're watching or listening, Tony Maritato may be raising his rates on Clarity FM, so get it while it is cheaper.
Look who is here, Healthy SBC,
Jeremy Sutton. You're welcome, Jeremy. It was awesome to catch up with you last week and speak. Jeremy was my first call on Clarity. Always great to hear from him. I love his accent. I love his energy, what he's doing. He's got a mobile practice, doing a lot of self-pay and speaking to concierge physicians and helping a ton of community members down there. So
Jeremy's been getting out on local TV. stuff. I mean, that's awesome. He released the second edition of his neck pain solution book. So I did a little cross promotion trying to tell therapists about it. Like, that's a perfect example. So if you look up Jeremy Sutton on Amazon, you'll find his book. If I was a therapist who even generally worked on neck, like right now I've got a patient in the clinic who's coming for an eval for neck pain. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to rub his neck. We're going to do a couple things, but I'm not an expert on neck. But what I would do is buy Jeremy's book, because I'm not going to write my own book. I would read Jeremy's book. I would create videos discussing Jeremy's book, and then I would put that out as a package where the patient or the client or the prospect out there could buy Jeremy's book plus my videos, maybe even some products, like we do cupping on the neck, and we do a couple other things for the neck. There's so many ways that you can lever what's already out there. Jeremy already put the work into creating the book. We just need to leverage that. And it's great partnership, whether he wants to be your partner or not.
Would it ever make sense, or what are the pros and cons of, I'm just thinking off the cuff, because I remember him writing that book. I feel like it was years ago, maybe even before.
There's a second edition to it.
Oh, this is the second one. Yeah. What are the pros and cons of a therapist or a practice owner that wants to have the local notoriety? They go to Jeremy and they say, hey, would you ever white label this book? Right. So it's like, I don't know if there's success stories and testimonials, maybe you change those out. You pay Jeremy. I don't know if he's even open to this. Probably not, but you pay him for the title and the contents of the book. And then the practice owner puts their headshot on the book and says, author Tony Maritato, Dr. Dave Kittle, who, whatever the therapist's name. And then you take that to physicians and you take that to networking events, whatever, and say, hey, now I'm an author. And you shortcut, because I don't want to write a book at all. Like I would want to hire a ghostwriter regardless. Any pros and cons to that? Would you get dinged on Amazon? Like, what would be the issue there?
I think it would work. I would do a green screen. I'd set up. I'd put Jeremy right there with me on the cover. I would add a contribution, with ChatGPT now. I mean, we could totally add a couple thousand words or whatever. And so his book is the core. And then we just add a couple elements to it, change the cover, upload it. To your point, I mean, who cares what Amazon does? Because we're not trying to sell to the general public. We're using that as a business card to promote ourselves, to promote what we're doing.
Right.
Absolutely. And Jeremy would sell licensing agreements so that you would be allowed to license the parts of the content. But yeah, like, why reinvent the wheel? All right, let's wrap it up. Let's do parting shots. I want to start. The big thing from today's show, this was like a great hands-on tutorial. These are the hard lessons that I went through. I tell people that I work with all the time, like the metrics, the policies, the procedures, the way you run your business, this is the skeleton. We all focus on the muscles, but if we don't have bones to pull against, we're not going to move anything forward. You cannot have something called a business without having the metrics that Dave shared, without having the systems and policies to make those metrics effective. What do you got?
Jeremy Sutton also said, he commented live, that he made an offer yesterday to take a patient or a client to Paris. I think Tony, in the next week or two, whenever Jeremy's free, we got to have him on the show. We got to talk about this type of stuff, because I gave the example over the summer that I had a patient in Manhattan that was going out to the Hamptons, and I said, hey, like, I'm not driving out there, but I'll take this $1,000 Blade helicopter from Manhattan each way. And they said no to it. But who cares? Like, it's the beautiful thing. Like, they said no. Okay, great. Like, I don't go. And like, I didn't have a therapist. I don't have a therapist out in the Hamptons, whatever. So I would love to hear more from Jeremy. He's thinking outside the box. He's one of us. I love it.
He's an executor. Every time we say something, he goes out and does it. Whether it, has great results or not, doesn't matter. He is an executor. And by the way, Jeremy, you're talking about Paris, Texas, because there is a Paris in Texas. All right.
Oh, no, guys. I hope you're talking about the actual Paris in France. Hey, it's Dave Kittle. Are you a healthcare business owner or physical therapy practice owner who is looking to figure out your succession plan or exit strategy? We might be able to help. And in fact, we may be interested in acquiring your practice. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. Shoot me an email at dave@conciergepainrelief.com. That's DAVE at CONCIERGE painrelief.com. Or you can call me at any time, 646-781-8884.